Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a full restoration of a Pioneer SX690 receiver. As you can see, it's in a pretty poor state. It looks like it's been dragged out of a bin, but in fact it's been given to us by somebody who's had it in they've admitted to having it in their garage for the past 15 to 18 years. And all it's been doing in there is getting damp and corroded. It's got rust over the top steel surface, and the faux wooden end plates are not looking very good. The knobs are missing as well. Don't know where they went. But what it's got there in terms of button caps and the big tuning knob on there looks like it's corroded as well. What we do with these things is we take a look at the aesthetics first. There's no point making it electronically perfect if it's never going to look right again. So we go and tear this down, fully strip it apart, and put all the chassis component parts that we can get to and deal with on the bench like this. So what you've got here is a steel top plate, two faux wooden end plates with simulated grain on them. And anyway, the electronics here, we can sort anything out in there. There's nothing rocket science-ish in there at all. Anything in there can be sorted out and fixed. But looking at it, it's had a bit of a idle, corroding life. Let's see if we can make it look as it should in the showroom. So first of all, we take a look at what it is that we can deal with, and as you see, the adhesives have gone. This simulated grain is all peeling off. It doesn't take very much force to take it off the plastic end plates. This is a plastic adhered bed against chipboard, and the chipboard's been veneered around the edges. At least the veneer is safe. So there's things we can do here. We've got all the tools, materials, tricks and techniques to be able to put this right. And then of course there's the steel top plate as well. We've got to put that right. And that, like any piece of steel, whether it be a classic car, you can always re-texture coat it and replate it. Now there is some American light oak veneer. Very good quality, very thick actually. I've used this company before for this product, and it's always proved extremely easy material to work with. And it's a question of sizing it up and adhering it to the side of those plates, and then redressing the holes for where the end bolts go. So what I'm doing now is flattening this out so that I've got something that I can work with that isn't a curve. Just leave it there for about half an hour. And now of course I've adhered it. Now there's several ways of doing this. You can either use a heat gun, as you can see the green heat gun on the end there, which gives me a certain amount of control, or a standard clothes iron. That can get you flat first, but the heat gun sorts out any of the any air pockets or bubbles that you might have that you can squeeze out to make them perfectly flat. And they're still warm at this point, actually quite hot. Now I've coloured them. Now that's not a wood stain. If you think that's a wood stain, forget it. It's not. We use another material for this, and it produces the best results. Wood stains are very translucent. This almost mimics the veneer when it's finished with the clear coat on it. Now we're going to have a look at the metalwork. Metalwork's actually quite easy to deal with. What's difficult is getting what we call the bubble coat on top. It's like a texture coat. It's not a flat. So we've discovered a technique to be able to put the bubbles back in and then put the satin black over the top. At the same time, another engineer is going to be looking at the electronics here, taking the air compressor to the unit and getting as much of the 35 years or so of dust out of it. And there we go, we've re-bobble coated that in satin black. Isn't that nice? So we now have two fairly good uncoated wooden end plates. This has just been stained, and a finished bobble coat top without the rust. Now we have to deal with the aluminium faceplate and all of its problems. Now if a brushed aluminium faceplate has got pitting, corrosion, and dents in it and dings, there's very little you can do with it, because it's actually not really brushed aluminium. It's an aluminium with an anodized finish, then brushed and then clear coated. So anybody thinking that they can replace the brush effect, taking something like emery paper to it, you'll just simply take the finish off. That won't work. So there are some pits in this that we just simply cannot deal with, but looking at it, the rest of it, 98% of it is pretty good. So I've put power into this for the very first time. I've only put 70 volts in. It's enough really to light up most things and put some bias across the amps to see what condition the electronics is in without causing any ill effects, without burning anything else out or causing any new problems. There's just not enough current in there to do it, but it gives us a fairly good indication of what is going on with all the electronic circuits. The tuner doesn't work, the amplifiers don't work, everything is dead. This is the point at which we managed to at least get the tuner working, because we found out the reason why that had died. Several components inside had decided to expire just simply through corrosion and oxidization. Oxidization is an important point, because quite a lot of vintage audio suffers from this, especially certain transistor types where the packages they're a bit porous and they don't keep the humidity away from the silicon substrate inside. If anybody's got an amplifier or any sort of vintage audio that's got an intermittent crackle, it's usually because certain transistors have allowed air in through the leg pockets, and the moment the silicon substrate starts to oxidize, that's it, you're into intermittent crackle and then eventual failure, breakdown. Taking the bass off here, which is, as you can see, fairly good because it was covered by its own instrumentation. It's a galvanized finish on there, so it's not going to rust too much. And now we're into examining the electronics and finding out where all the problems lie. And then at the same time, whilst we've got this stripped down, we can then deal with the fascia to make that look a lot prettier than it did when it first came out of the garage. And then sort out, again, another 35 years worth of dust and grime and spiders and flies that have got in there, and get all of those evicted. And now we're seeing some health back into the unit. We've got the tuner working, we've got some sound out of it, but it's not right because there's crackle on the controls and some of the controls don't function properly at all. Now, this typically is down to tarnishing of certain metal parts inside those controls and dust and dirt and filth and grime all over the carbon tracks. But I'm not getting, at this point I'd noticed, a very stable tuning range. It kept drifting. That tells you a few things as well, to do with some of the controls inside the unit for setting up the tuner's frequency band, its voltage controlled oscillator in there to maintain a stable concentration onto
the fundamental carrier frequency of a radio station, so it stays stable to that station without any side drift. That's the outcome you're looking for. So it's still got a lot of problems at this point. Yes, now I'm hunting out a voltage, which I know because I've done so many of these. I know that something doesn't exist, and I'm just going in there to check it. And yes, as you can see, it's gone. Those numbers, there's supposed to be 22 volts on there, and there isn't. There's one part of the circuit is absolutely idle, nothing getting through. Typically there's a lot of components in the power supply that deliver current to that part of the circuit, and it's not doing so. So it's my next job to then start sorting out those areas. At the end of this, I think we swapped left and right channel some 22 or so components in total, because they'd all ended up with either being completely destroyed, or they were suspect. And we have a saying in our workshop: if it's suspect, swap it, don't leave it. There's no point. And for the cost of a resistor or a capacitor, you just might as well just get it out. And also it eliminates that part of the circuit from your investigation, so you can ignore it from then on in. Doesn't mean to say that you need to replace everything. It's just the most troublesome parts. Age can take its toll on these items, and we know through past experience where all the troublesome parts are. And we get customers calling us up saying, oh, I've got an X that has got this problem. And we typically know where that problem is derived. Seen it before. We've done a lot of them. Actually, out of the SX range Pioneers, I think in the past year we've done about 12 to 15 of these units throughout the range. The 570s, the 590s, the 690s and the 790s. They are brilliant receivers though when they are back in online and they're dialed in properly. They're absolutely stunning. And I like the two little tiny watt meters on the tuning scale. Oh, that's how I look for components. Yeah, just shine a bright light so that the PCB illuminates and I can see exactly the component I'm trying to get to. So I don't have to look at both sides of the circuit board at the same time. Nice little trick there for anybody who's interested in studying electronics. Now I've got full power on this. The Variac's up to 208 volts at the minute. Just pouring in the first load of almost mains level voltage. Most of it is back together and receiving properly and maintaining stable tuning. But there's still a distortion that I'm worried about. The preamplifiers have got some issues by the looks of it, and I've just started to trace that down. In the meantime, somebody else is getting on with the aluminium faceplate, which is over there. That's come back to me. Oh, and the knobs need to be sorted out as well. Managed to gather this up from various sources. They are the correct ones, and all the buttons have been taken off the phaser as well, so they're going to ferment in this for a while. Nothing like fermenting your knob. So they'll get cleaned up. The corrosion has been taken away from the faceplate, as you can see, and all of the polymers, all the optics, have been repolished up. Polymer material, for example, like on turntables, you can take a certain amount off, 50, 100 microns, whatever you need to get most of the swirl and scratches out of them, to make them look as fresh as you possibly can.
and this hasn't got any damage to those front optics at all now. And there we go, there's the final assembly of this. That was a bit quick, didn't show the repair because it was actually quite a long one for that part of the preamp to get rid of the distortion. And I'm listening, whenever I'm doing this, I'm listening to it through headphones all the time. Whenever I'm maneuvering it, moving it left and right, upside down, moving it around, orienting it in different axes, and listening to the headphones. If anything drops out, if anything changes, I can hear it. And there's the wooden end plates, now with their clear coat on, matching the veneer that was the original veneer by Pioneer. And this has got a nice super grain in it, and it's not that cheap, nasty plastic. And there's the top, and wouldn't you know it, there's a little speck of dust, the white speck of dust on there while we're doing this. And the back has been completely dressed up as well. So hopefully somebody is going to enjoy this, and it's going to be reliable for the next 10, 20, 30 years perhaps, until somebody else has to come along and do some rework to it, and hopefully it doesn't end up in the bin. They're beautiful units, they really are. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this restoration of a SX690 Pioneer receiver. Enjoy it.